you're applying energy to it, the total amount of cost of this thing actually begins to drop. This is the man-hours per unit of whatever it is that you're producing. If we had to produce cars today using strictly manpower, nobody would be able to afford one. They'd cost millions. In the newest automobile plants, or some of the newer automobile plants now, the total number of man-hours involved in the production of one car is down to about 9 man-hours. And that's all in the production of one vehicle. And take a look under the hood sometime, and you know that is a complicated piece of equipment. Another place where this is really beginning to occur now is in the computer business. Now is a great time to go out and buy yourself a PC. Why? Because they're automating this thing at a very fast rate of speed, as fast as they can go. Well, what's the next thing that happens here? This is really great for business. It's really terrible for the people who work there. In the first part of this curve, when this curve is going up, the economists like to refer to this as a growth industry. It's like all those rabbits that Voltaire and Lotka like to talk about. You take all these rabbits and you put them into a pristine area with plenty of food to eat and everything else. These rabbits have landed in a virtual Garden of Eden. Boy, are they happy. They multiply totally without limit. Without limit means exponentially. Why shouldn't they? They've got plenty of food, everything, they're just as happy as clams. But what happens eventually? A family of foxes begins to move in, and what they've discovered is a Garden of Eden to them. Lots of rabbits. Well, what happens here? These guys start to tail off. And no matter what it is that you're looking at here, a curve like this can be drawn for a single business, a whole industry, or the whole economy. What was the first business in the U.S. that we applied technology to? Our best technology. In the 1930s back here, what was our largest industry? It was agriculture. 70% of our people in 1830 worked on the farms. So that was our largest industry, and that's what we applied our technology to. What happened? Today, these man-hours have peaked out, and now it's down here so close to zero you can hardly tell the two apart. It's down to less than 3% and dropping fast, and most of those farmers do not want to leave the farm. They're being kicked out because there's no room for them. There's no room for their produce. Another thing that Technocracy said is that as the total amount of the physical production actually increases, the price will drop towards zero. And if you go back, for instance, and look at the price of wheat today, by comparison with what it was back here in 1830, it's very low. It has dropped steadily from that time on. Now, what's happened in manufacturing? They said, well, we had to go into manufacturing. Boy, there's no jobs left on the farm, so we got to move into manufacturing. When you go back and actually draw out the curves for this thing, I did that once, and I wish I'd brought the darn curve along with me because I did sketch it out. You find that this thing peaked out about 1920 in manufacturing. That came as a real shock to me. Because when you go back and look at the total amount of production in manufacturing in this country is still increasing. And they're saying that manufacturing in this country is declining. What we're manufacturing isn't declining. The number of people involved in it sure is. And now the economists tell us, they say, well, we're in the information age. This is a service economy, so on and so forth, as though exactly this same collection of trends will not somehow or another apply to that. You can bet that it will. For the last 60 years, Technocracy has been offering the only plan for the operation of a high-energy civilization that exists anywhere. There is no other plan. Believe me, if there was one out there, the technocrats would know about it. In fact, we'd probably be one of the first to know about it. There is no other one. But what are we going to do here? we're going to wait until this thing drives us right into the dirt, aren't we? Because what is going to happen as time goes by? You don't have to do very much looking around here in LA to see what's happening is that we're developing a very large underclass in this country. A very large underclass. And the question is, as that underclass gets larger and larger, how much longer are they going to be willing to be an underclass and sit quietly and take their welfare payments if they're lucky enough to get them? Or find a bridge overpass to live under? Are we going to wait until we're facing a social catastrophe before we begin to do something? And the way technocrats are looking at it right now, it kind of looks that way. Because we've got two choices. We don't have to go into the kind of a society that technocracy has described at all. We can go into a total economic collapse, which is exactly what is going to happen if you keep on running this way. Now, there are a lot of people in this country, fascism is getting to be real popular in this country right now. If you think you're going to point a gun at this system and make it work better, I don't think so. You're going to find the same collection of problems that all the politicians who are up there now have, well-meaning as they are. And what technocracy is saying, we damn well better get the lead out and get the lead out fast. The way to do that is to know as much as you can about technocracy, be a part of it, join it, do as much as you can to push it. Now! That's why we're here. So, with that, I'm pretty much through.
While you're writing out your questions, I wanted to mention that we have the two latest Technocrat magazines. The Northwest Technocrat, has this exponential growth curve of debt on the cover. There's nothing in the text of the magazine that relates to that other than just a little short description of the cover. But I noticed in the middle of the magazine there's a quote by Sitting Bull, who was a well-known Indian chief. In 1885, he made this comment. He said, "The white man knows how to make everything, but he does not know how to distribute it." And then the other magazine that's from Vancouver, Canada, the Technocracy Digest. This is the one for the second quarter of 1993. It says, the title says, "Solution is Technocracy." The main article is "Who Does Your Thinking for You?" And then there's another article about the prophecy of President Abraham Lincoln. And a number of you were fortunate enough to receive this copy that we made from the Cleveland Plain Dealer of the plot of the national debt. And you'll notice, you go down here where the little Confederate flag is, there's a leap in 1865 to $3 billion in debt. Now, it's an interesting story about that. Abraham Lincoln went to the lenders at the beginning of the Civil War and asked them what kind of interest rate that they would charge the government to loan the government the money to operate the war. And I think that what I read was that they said that they'd be happy to provide him all the funds he needed at 18%. And supposedly his comment was, "I'm not sure who the real enemy of this country is, but," he says, "I'm fairly certain they're in this room with me." Well, interestingly enough, there was no debt incurred during the entire Civil War, because Abraham Lincoln used the powers vested in him by the Constitution to create the greenback. And the greenback was used to pay all of the debts of the nation during the Civil War. Well, very, very shortly, almost immediately after his assassination, the greenback was declared worthless. They were all brought back something like 5 cents in the dollar, and the bankers financed the Civil War. And there we see our first little leap there. I understand we're still paying for that. And of course, that's just almost an insignificant pimple in there. But the interesting thing was that